Thanks very much, Taras, and welcome everybody. Good morning. As Taras mentioned, my name is Dave Campbell. I am a Microsoft 365 consultant here at CompanyNet. I've been for many moons, all the way through from on-premise architectures to the cloud, at its inception through to where we are now, and the evolution of M365 primarily. You probably know from especially the last webinar that we hosted around citizen development and centre of excellence and how to kind of drive and nurture talent. The kind of easiest progression from that was to move into automation. RPA is something that I'll explain and talk about throughout today's session. We've also got some great demos lined up as well, which we can step through and show you some of the intelligence behind it as well. So without further ado, let's step through into the agenda first and foremost. So first of all, I'm just going to tell you a bit about what RPA is. I'm going to give you the Gartner definition of RPA, and then talk about what that means with a breakdown of the different elements involved within the M365 landscape. Talk about some of the tools, so give you some examples there, some information about those tools, some of the intelligent automation that we have there as well. We'll then step into the demos where I'll show you some real examples of how these solutions can be used. Then we'll come back and we'll talk about the kind of wider ecosystem and the future of RPA as well. Before touching on licensing, because that's obviously one of the big things with these intelligence tools. It's all about understanding what the licensing means and understanding where to get the information you need to purchase the correct licenses. So let's start off with a quick analysis of what is RPA. So let's look at the Gartner kind of definition first and foremost. So robotic process automation is a productivity tool that allows a user to configure one or more scripts, which some vendors refer to as bots, to activate specific keystrokes in an automated fashion. The result is that the bots can be used to mimic or emulate selected tasks, transaction steps, within an overall business or IT process. These may include manipulating data, passing data to and from different applications, triggering responses, or executing transactions. RPA uses a combination of user interface interaction and descriptor technologies. The scripts can overlay on one or more software applications. So as you can see, that's very wordy, lots of kind of information to take in there. What that's basically telling us is that the whole robotic aspects of the kind of process automation, I suppose it's faux in a sense where we're building scripts, we're building a process, we're building logic into the automation aspect, and that's makes it feel like it's being carried out by a robot, by something else other than us, pretty much to instigate that. And RPA's kind of started quite small with, a lot of the kind of big providers like UiPath, Blue Prism, and all the other kind of the big software vendors. And then it's moved into a lot of cloud-driven automation as well. So what I'll do now is I'll kind of go through the different elements of automation and more specifically around M365 as well. So let's look first at the cloud-driven aspect. So using the power of the clouds to automate processes within the cloud. So specifically, we talk about Power Automate here to kind of drive the automation of your processes. It's deeply embedded within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, so everything within your M365 ecosystem is connectable. You can use the data there, you can integrate the data, you can action on the data, all within this automation kind of process. And then you've got access to advanced model-driven tools, which I'll discuss a little bit later with things like AI Builder and Power Virtual Agents and some really exciting and kind of feature-rich tools. Then there's a second element of that. So there's the UI automation. So that's client-based automation using tools to automate clicks and navigation. So Here we're talking primarily about your Windows 10 device, or your Mac OS device, your physical hardware or virtual hardware that you're utilizing to kind of drive your processes. What RPA can do, or what some of the tools can do, is they are able to use the elements that you use or see within your screen and drive a process around that. So automation, automation of apps importing or inserting data into applications that reside within your or upon your laptop. It's just such a great way to use it, and combining both cloud-driven and UI automation is seamless and simpler than you would imagine as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later when I go through the demos as well. And then the third rung in the ladder there is the intelligence. So I suppose more widely known as intelligent automation. So this is where you're bringing things like AI, model-driven automation, machine learning, cognitive services, all of the really AI-focused elements, and bringing them to your automation. So, decision making, form processing, character recognition. All of those elements just really embellish the whole kind of, I suppose, the art of the possible with automation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the AI builder a bit later on. I'm going to tell you a bit more about it as well, but that's one of my favorites. It's a great tool. You can use it for simple things like processing invoices, which is going to be part of the demonstration. And then obviously Power Virtual Agents and the kind of bot-led functionality. So, building conversational bots that, via PVA or Power Virtual Agents, or via the bot service in Azure. Really strong ways to bring, that, I suppose, that kind of face to your automation. So instead of being, a button you click, it goes away and it automates that process for you. You've got that interaction where you can feed in data, you can feed in options, and then from that out the back, you can have this more targeted automation element that you can run that's kind of bespoke or specific to the user and their requirements. So what are some of the RPA tools? Now, as I mentioned, I'm going to purely focus on the M365 toolset here. But this all started with things like UiPath and Blue Prism. UiPath I've probably had quite a lot of experience with. It's a great tool, offers great functionality, but can be rather complex. But then let's also look at the cloud-driven products and some of the intelligence items as well. So you'll see here we are looking at Power Automate, and that's not just Power Automate from the cloud, but that's Power Automate desktop, and how that's utilized, especially with their move to kind of making that available in the personal instance on a Windows 10 device without any cost. And then what you can do with that, so what it can connect to, what it can utilize, what it can pull, what it can interact with, it's so advanced, and much more advanced than it has been for a long time. I think one of the great things is looking at a mature tool like UiPath, with all the functionality and all the kind of thought and thought leadership and intelligence that's built in. When Power Automate desktop was first released, you could see a lot of similarities, a lot of elements in there that were already quite mature. And the way that it interacts with your cloud services as well gives it that extra kind of tick in the box that makes it such a good solution to utilize. The next one is Power Virtual Agents. So that is conversational bots. And I suppose most people think that bots are quite difficult to build. I think when I show you Power Virtual Agents, you'll understand how accessible building a bot is. And not just building a bot that's going to hold a conversation, but building a bot that's going to do things for you. It's going to kick off processes. It's going to be able to kind of do some intelligence and automation behind the scenes. And then AI Builder, I won't spend too much time talking about that just now. I'll talk about it a bit later. But one of my favorite tools, directly integrated building models that can carry out particular actions using a lot of the kind of machine learning and cognitive services that Microsoft have to offer. And some of the kind of models that you can build with that are just fantastic. I'm going to show you a kind of simple one, or a really useful one later on. And then the Pioneer applications, that's the UiPaths, the Blue Prisms, and all of these other automation kind of applications that you can install and utilize. I mean, what I'll talk a lot about as we go through is this idea of attended and unattended. So with most automation applications or automation tools or RPA tools, you have two different models that you can run it under. One is the attended bot, so you're there, you're clicking, you're interacting with the bot as it's going through and running through the automation. Whereas you have that's probably more focused for end users on their devices, that they need to start a process and they step through it. The other element, or flip of the coin, there is the unattended element, which is very much, there is no interaction. It'll sit on a virtual server in the cloud, it'll sit in the cloud service, it'll sit somewhere where the automation is automatic and no interaction is required. And sometimes the licenses work different depending on what type of automation you wish to use. So let's go through and have a quick look at Power Automate. So Power Automate is embedded in M365, the cloud service specifically. You can automate cloud processes directly within M365, directly connected to all your M365 applications and services. But then it's got this whole ream of premium connectors on top of that, which allow you to connect to third-party services. Even if that's just a web element, then it's got a basic HTTP connector that you can post or get information from a web service. So such a great way, an expansive way to do it. I mean, I'll have a look at the connectors and give you a quick look at Power Automate as we step through the demo. So we'll go through a bit more in detail then. And as we mentioned, UI flows, so that's Power Automate Desktop. So it brings the power of Power Automate, I know that's quite a sentence, to the desktop. So, this is a tool that you can, build your processes on your laptop. You're utilizing your Windows 10 services. You're utilizing your applications that you're launching, that you're using day in, day out. And you're building really intelligent automation, which removes so much kind of time sinks for your kind of daily tasks. Simple things like exporting emails from your Outlook, removing the attachments and saving them, which is part of the demo, which I'll show you a bit later. Is one of those aspects that just really works really well, especially if you've got a lot of invoices, a lot of purchase orders coming in through your email. It's a good way of automating, grabbing that information and kind of storing it. Just one simple example, but there's so much you can do with it, and I'll kind of step through it a bit later. And then the broad landscape for automation. So Power Automate now spans obviously desktop and cloud with advancing interconnectivity. There's certain elements that you can pull and utilize now, but the way that Power Automate Desktop is evolving, it's only going to get better, and you're only going to be able to integrate them more and more as time goes on. And then engineered to fit into a citizen development program with its free licensing for the end users. They're free to build processes, automate elements of the business. And then that can be brought through the citizen development program, where it can be approved and then released to the organization. So a great way of getting it through there. The next tool we'll look at is Power Virtual Agents. Now, Power Virtual Agents, they drive automation with bots. I mean, they're not specifically built to be an automation engine. But what you can do with them is, you can have a conversation with this bot, you can interact with it, just by a trigger action or a trigger conversation text. And then it will go through a conversation. It will gather information about what it is you're trying to find out, whether that's simply a Q&A. Could just give you a lot of kind of questions and answers. Here's all the information you need. Fantastic. Thank you very much, bot. Goodbye. But then there's the extra element of that where, depending on how they flow through that bot conversation, then at some point they could kickstart a Power Automate flow just by the answer they give to the bot or the information that they input into the kind of bot itself. It's such a great way to get your kind of information from your user base and have that automation element at the back end. It's such a great tool, and I'll show you quickly a bit about that later on. So the ease of building a conversation, as I mentioned earlier, building bots has always been a bit scary. It's like, maybe do I need some kind of programming language? Do I need to understand the bot service? Do I need to do anything with that? And I suppose with the kind of the dawn of things like Teams app templates from Microsoft, where they're building and surfacing bots for you in Teams by the template approach, that's made bots very accessible to organizations, and Power Virtual Agents is making that even easier to kind of get to grips with and build a bot. And I'll show you that so you can see how easy it really is. I mean, I'm not lying. It's completely simple, and it's something that we see a lot of. As soon as an organization understands how a Power Virtual Agent works, what you can do with it, then we see a lot of organizations using it in really intelligent ways. And then not as costly as it once was. I mean, Power Virtual Agents, usually people would look at the pricing calculators for this and they'd be looking at thousands of dollars per month, just for the service and just to utilize it. That's now becoming a bit more cost effective with a lot of the kind of embellishment licenses that are available, and then Power Virtual Agents for Teams as well. So a lot of the stuff that you can do with Power Virtual Agents is now normally included in standard enterprise licensing. So licensing is that big kind of mess of information that it's sometimes really hard to kind of to get an understanding of, but I'm going to give you a nice little kind of guide, and hopefully, I'm sure Taras won't mind, but we'll send it out with the slides after the session as well, so you can consume that. It's such an understandable document, and it's the first one from Microsoft around licensing that actually makes sense, which is good. So that's Power Virtual Agents. We'll show you a bit about that later on. Then AI Builder. So as I say, one of my favorites. So what this allows you to do is to build intelligent automation. So you still may have your bots, your Power Automate, whatever at the front end, Power Automate desktop. You'll have that element there, but then it's going to use one of these models that you've built within the AI Builder to either do things like entity extraction, form processing, prediction, object detection, and category classification. So there's a lot of models already listed there, so they're already available to be used, and you can build a custom version of that. But there's also a lot of templates that you can utilize for the task that you need to carry out, which I'll kind of go through shortly. Oops. So document-based automation as well. So this is primarily what I'll show you in the demonstration. So allows you to some next level automation for structured and unstructured documents, reusable models that use AI and built-in AI builder models, which I've discussed already. There's a preview element of this as well, which is making this, taking the models that already exist and building a program around it. So you've got, things where, you're processing forms, but then you're also doing some classification of that information, and then extracting entities from that. So there's this whole element that Microsoft are building around documents, which are so time consuming when you're processing invoices, processing purchase orders, or capturing information from business cards. I mean, all of these elements that are time consuming for a person within your organization, Microsoft are aiming and focused on making this a kind of simpler way of doing things. And then easy access to machine learning and AI. So no knowledge required around machine learning and AI, really. The models are pre-built. You don't need to go in there and build your model from the ground up. All you need to do is to follow a simple wizard to input information. Even the training aspect of your AI kind of element is simple with, you know, the wizard kind of process that you go through, and you'll see that when we kind of step through the demo, which should be good fun. And then finally, Pioneer applications. So basically application-based UI automation. So you have an application like Power Automate Desktop on your laptop, your hardware, or your virtual device if you're using Windows Virtual Desktop. It's the mature element here that we're looking at things like UiPath and Blue Prism and all the kind of other automation houses. They have been building these tools and advancing these tools for such a long time. They are fully compatible with different versions of Windows, different versions of Mac. They even have free versions that you're available to try and use in a personal scenario. Lots of really good things there, and they're tools that, I mean, I think Power Automate Desktop especially has taken a lot from, which is only a good thing. And as I mentioned, fully mature, so they've been around for years. They've been on the market with advances in AI, with intelligence. They've only got better. They've got all these intelligent elements in there, exactly how M365 has now expanded and explored with Power Automate Desktop, and then Power Automate, and then the link into the machine learning and AI at the back end, which is fantastic. But it can be a little bit complex. You know, you will probably need to know some kind of basic understanding of logic, .NET, variables, passing variables, creating variables, creating data tables. A lot of things that you need to get a good understanding of. So they don't necessarily fit well with a citizen or a standard citizen development program, although, you know, a centre of excellence with good nurturing, good education aspects, you know, you can make that as seamless as possible, or as seamless as you need it to be. But what you can do with them are extremely complex. And Power Automate Desktop is not quite there yet, but it's definitely snapping at the heels, which is great to see. So these tools can be used in intuitive and insightful ways. But how? So this leads us on to our demonstration. So what I'll do is I'll just break out of the slides here, and hopefully everybody can see my screen. It's not too small and things like that. But hopefully you'll be able to play this back and be able to zoom in and if you need to be. So what I thought we'd do is just go through things quite systematically. So I'll start first of all with Power Automate, which is the cloud-driven Power Automate. And you can see that, you know, it's making your life as easy as it possibly can. So you don't need to understand a great deal about coding, variables, and all that kind of good stuff. All you need to understand is where your data is, what you want to do with your data, what actions or transformation you want to do in your data, and then where you need to output things to. So, you know, using built-in connectors like, you know, anything that's Microsoft based. So, you know, Teams, Azure AD, you know, Planner, Excel, Word, they're all pre-exist, and you often find a template that kind of marks exactly what you need to do. But then the other element of that is the premium connectors you can utilize. So there's a lot of premium connectors that you can, you know, as I mentioned earlier with the HTTP, that you can utilize that connect you directly into a third-party service, etc. So lots of really good ways that you can expand not just from the M365 pane, but also out into the kind of third party and kind of connections to other services, which is great. You'll see here you can build a template from blank. That's no problem at all. One that's automated, so fully automated, and works when something happens. So there's always a trigger action that then kickstarts the rest of the process. An instant cloud flow, so one that runs as soon as you click a button, is something that can be utilized. Scheduled cloud flows as well, so you can have a weekly reports run that maybe generates a report from a SharePoint list or from a kind of Dataverse database, and pulls that into an Excel document, into a Power BI report, or whatever you need to do for that. So again, you can run them on schedules, and it's really easy to kind of build that in as a trigger. Desktop flows, relatively new to the Power Automate on the clouds. This is how they're playing and advancing with the integration with Power Automate Desktop, and they're making kind of good kind of waves with it as well. But you can see here we've got lots and lots of templates, and then lots of connectors that we can use as well. So if I jump into all connectors there, you'll see that there's a great catalog here of like hundreds of connectors. You'll notice that they're all quite plain when it comes to whether things are premium or whether things are not premium. And depending on the licensing that you have for your organization, for Power Apps, for Power Platform in general, will depend on what licenses or what elements that you can utilize out of the box. Generally, anything that's M365 related will be built in. There will be no premium requirement for that. Anything generally outside of that, or anything a bit more intelligent, then generally you'll need to kind of pay a premium to have access to those. But generally, you can have bolt-on licenses that give you access to the premium connectors. You can create custom connectors as well, which I know we're talking about a catalog of available connectors here. As long as there's an API available for what you need to connect to, there's a potential for you to build a kind of custom connector, but again, that requires the more advanced licensing for Power Automate. But again, it's building a Power Automate flow. In fact, I'll quickly show you actually if I create a flow, just to see how easy it is to kind of build a flow. So let's go with a basic kind of automated cloud flow. So again, we just give it a name, and then we need to give it a trigger. As you say with it, or as I've said, with every flow that you create, there's always a trigger, whether that's a time, or whether that's a Power App button that's pressed, or whether that's a change to a SharePoint list. There's so much things that can be the trigger to that. So if I go with something simple like when an item is created, and then we'll create that, and you'll see that it's put that trigger in there for us. That trigger there is static. All you can do is build things that kind of branch out from that. So you can see that it's asking for the site address and the list that we're connecting to. So generally I would put that information in. For this example, I'm not going to do that. But what you can do is as soon as that item is created in SharePoint, then you can carry out an action. Now, everything in that created item is referenceable in the subsequent steps. So if I'd created, or if I'd selected a site there and a list, then it would pull that information through every time this runs. So what that would enable me to do is I could build a condition. My condition is based on the dynamic content, which would be, this column name, or another column name, or whether it's a user field, a person field, whatever the value of that is, I would be able to use that and then create a kind of a condition based on that. So if I had a column in my SharePoint list that said something like, are you a robot? And the answers were yes or no, then I could base this condition on that column is equal to yes or no, whatever I want to put in there as my kind of my branch. So if we said the column is equal to yes, and if that's correct, or if that is true, then it'll go down this yes branch, and you can have actions built here for that element. And then you can have elements or an actions that you can carry out for if that condition is false. It's such a great and easy way to build things. It's like building a flowchart. You'll see when we look at Power Virtual Agents, it's very similar in its approach as well. It's such a great way to kind of build things, and you don't need a lot of knowledge because it's already building through or picking the elements from your list. So you can use them and use them in really easy ways. The only thing you need to watch out for when it comes to condition, if you're using a field that's a yes or a no, is generally it's a Boolean, so you'd have to go true or false in general. But yeah. But yeah, that's kind of Power Automate. That's how you build Power Automate, and just a bit of a kind of information about the connectors and how they work. So what I'll do is I'll step into AI Builder, which is one of my favorite tools, which I've said about 20 times, so I do apologize. A bit of a fanboy here. But you can see here that as soon as you go into AI Builder, it's got your models across the top here. So you've got category classification, entity extraction, form processing, object detection, and prediction. So they are the kind of models, but then you have kind of templates that you can utilize here as well, which are fantastic. So like I mentioned earlier, a model that reads a business card and captures the data, maybe enters that information into a CRM system or into a database, into a Dataverse database or a SharePoint list. Category classification, entity extraction, identity document reader. So passports, this would be great for passports. It'd be able to pull out all the information and then capture that in whichever data source you wished. Invoice processing, which I'll step through and I'll build a custom model for. Key phrase extraction, language detection, which is such an intelligent tool. Receipt processing, again, really fantastic. You know, building into the AI more here with the sentiment analysis and text recognition as well. So lots of really kind of good tools there that you will have numerous kind of scenarios for internally to utilize them. They've also got a learning section as well, so you could easily come in here and launch one of these learning programs. They're free to utilize, so launch them, go through them. They only take 30-ish kind of minutes. And it gives you a kind of basic understanding of how to create a model and which model to use when as well, which is really good. So what I'm going to do is, before I show you the model that I've created, I'm going to just show you what building a model would look like. So if I go with the form processing one, which is what my demonstration is based around, let's give it a name. So I'm going to call this test. Nice new fantastic name. And you'll see here that it's already giving us information about, okay, what's this going to do for us? So it's going to automatically process documents, extract information from those documents, and it's going to be able to then import or use that data in whatever way that you wish to use it. So the way that it works is you build your model, so you analyze your sample document, and then from that sample document, it's going to detect what that contains, what text is in there, what tables are in there, what images are in there, if that's something you want to kind of look at. And it's going to get you to kind of train it. So you're going to pretty much define, okay, which piece of information do you want to extract? Okay, whereabouts is that on this invoice sheet? And then from there, you'll be able to kind of build and train the model, and then be able to simply use it to upload a document, and it would automatically go through and extract that information. So just a bit of information there. It's got some examples as well. I mean, this is the example that I'm using because it's quite a good kind of demonstration. So let's, without further ado, let's go through and create that. So you'll see it launches now into the kind of model wizard. I mean, I spoke a lot about the wizards earlier. Such a great way to step through and build your kind of model without too much kind of knowledge required. So what I've got is I've got some sample data in here. So if I go to train, and we'll open this document here, which is the one that I'm going to utilize. We can see some of the fields here where we'd want to extract data. So I'm just going to select a few of these. I won't select them all, just so you can see how the model's built. So let's go with things like, let's go with subtotal, shipping, and total. Okay, so we know that we want to pull those elements from this document. So let's pop back to our model, and we will add a field. And let's go with, I can't even remember what I said, subtotal. Done. We also want to pull shipping. And then we also want to pull, the total. But let's go that one extra step further, and let's say that we want to pull this information here, which is in a table format. So what we can also do in our model, if I keep clicking the right button, is we can add a single page table. And you can see here that it's going to allow us to build a table that looks like our table in the invoice. So I'm just going to call this, in fact, I'll leave it as table 1. So let's rename this column, and from my memory, I think it was item. Oh, that's not how you spell item. There we go, item. And then we had quantity, I think it was. Yeah, but I'll go back and check. Item, quantity, and amount. It's close. So you see, we built that table. Okay, so we'll be able to pull data in from that table. So let's go and done. So you can see here, I'm just pulling in some sample data from that document. So let's close that for the moment. And you'll see when I go to next, it's all about uploading sample documentation. So we're going to train this this model to understand where and what sort of data that we want to pull from that document. So generally 4 to 5 similar documents is always recommended. So if I go to, and you build up a collection for that. So let's upload from local storage. If we go back, we've got our train data here. So let's grab these 5 documents and we'll open them. We'll add them into that collection. And you'll see that they're all very much similar, just different kind of qualities of photocopy. Let's upload those 5 documents into our collection. And then what it's going to do is it's going to analyze these documents. So it's going to check the document to see what text is included in that document. If there's any images, is there any tables? And then from there, we can then use those documents to train the model to define what data we want to pull from it. So it just takes a minute or so to do that. And then you'll see the process that we need to follow after we've done this, which is a case of stepping through each document and defining where our data is. So the fields in that table that we defined when we were creating the model, it's going to ask us where that data is on the page. And from there, I'll also show you how it detects, or what it's detected on that page as well, which is quite good to see. We shall whistle while we wait. It doesn't take too long, but it should be any second now, and then we'll be able to have a look at the data. I've also got the licensing sheet, which I'll show you as well before we end the demonstration, and just a small introduction to Power Virtual Agents as well. So you see here that it's defined, it's got all of the documents up the top right here in our collection. So, all of the ones that we've uploaded. And if I go to the top here and select show detected words, you'll see that this dotted lines around everything, it's picking up that as text that it's found within this document itself. So you can see it's picked up everything within our document, which is a great start. If there was any images there, we'll be able to kind of pull them from it as well. And then you can see what we need to do now is to start defining what our fields are. Now to do that, so let's take our subtotal first. So if I scroll down, what I can do is you're looking for the value of your field. So let's select that as our subtotal value. And then it pops up and tells us, okay, well, what field does this align to? So that aligns to our subtotal. Then our shipping, so let's grab that and we'll define that as our shipping. And then we've also got a total, so let's define that as our total. And then we've got our table, which is, again, very intuitive. So we select our entire table there, then we can select our table, and then we can start adding things to the table. So here we're just looking for the line items. So let's look for the item name, the quantity, and the amount. You can see that's added a row into our table. And then if I do the same for the other examples here, and the same with this one, you'll see that it's adding a row every time. So it knows how the rows are defined. There we go. So that's added our table. So it's done that. And you'll see that we've now completed that document. So we've trained, or we've shown the model where our data is in that document. Okay. And the reason why we've got 5 documents there, or sometimes even more, is because there may be slight differences to the documents when they come through. Maybe one's a bit slanted, or one has something scored out and replaced. You know, there's lots of kind of reasons why you'd want to do as many kind of as you can. So let's go into our second document. You can see again that's detected the same words there if I show the detected words. So again, we're just looking for our values here. So our subtotal, our shipping, and our total. And then again, we can define our table. So less items this time. And again, we're adding each row into our table. And then AI Builder is going to use these this inputs or this kind of definitions that we're setting here to train our model to be as accurate as it can be. So it's done that, and then we'll go for the next one because that's complete. Now we've got all our fields in, and let's quickly select subtotal, shipping, and total, and then we'll quickly select our table, table 1. And you see there's just 2 row items in here this time. There we go. And then press done, and then again it's accepted that. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to do that for all 5 of our documents, and from there it's going to know that, okay, well, where is that document, where is that information, where's that data on our page? Once you've done that, you'll be able to click on next, and then you'll be able to analyze, to train the model. So once you click on train, it can take anywhere up to a couple of hours, depending on how big your model is. But what that will do is that will learn, it will evolve, it will know where your data is, and you'll be able to then use that model once you've trained it. So what we'll do is we'll test the model that I've created, so one I've made earlier. So let's save and close that for the moment. You'll see that I've got this demo here. So if I launch demo, you can see that all of the information that I want to pull from this is listed here in the selected fields. We're not using our model just yet because we've not published it. But what we can do is we can test it by going here and going to quick test. So if I upload a test document, which is included in this test pack, then what it's going to do is going to run the model against this document, and it's going to define everything that I've asked it to define. So it's finding the build to value, it's finding the date, it's finding the due date, it's finding the balance, it's finding our table, it's adding them to the items table. It's finding all of our kind of values down the bottom as well. Only thing I haven't done is added the invoice number, which I should have done for the kind of demo model itself. And the idea is that you can then use that model in Power Automate and Power Apps. So you can call this model within your Power App to run and collect this information, and then do something with that data. You could then use Power Automate to run at a scheduled time against the location where you have the invoices. It would load the invoices into the model, It would run through it, and you'll be able to then define to pull that information, and then from there you can then connect to a CRM system, you can connect to a finance system, and you can input that data. So you can imagine how useful that would be to automate that aspect of the business. And AI Builder is the key to doing that. It's such a fantastic tool. And one of the elements just quickly within Power Automate desktop is I'll build a kind of small flow here. If I go and I edit this, just as an example, I know most finance organizations or departments are a lot more organized than I am, but let's say I have all of my invoices in my my email. So let me just drag this across. And then what I'm doing within my Automate desktop here is I'm launching Outlook. I'm connecting to my email to a specific folder, or my invoices folder, where I've saved or put all my emails that come in with an invoice attached to it. And then what I'm doing is I'm saving the attachments to a specific folder in my OneDrive. That can be a SharePoint location, can be anywhere. And then I'm closing Outlook at the end of that. So if I, in fact, if I show you that I have sample data back here, back there, back here, there we go. So I've got invoices here, which is empty. The more I've got all my invoices in a folder in my email, but if I run this, then this is going to run a local automation. So it's going to run my Outlook in the background. It's going to retrieve the email addresses from emails from that folder. It's going to save the attachments to my folder. And when I go in here, you'll see that it's pulled every attachment from those files. And one of the kind of ways that this would work within that AI Builder process to get all of the data you need to then pass through the model. And the way that Power Automate Desktop is going is you could then build a flow after you've closed your Outlook that then automatically sends these to AI Builder to process that data. And then once that data has been processed, it can then be handed over to Power Automate the cloud to then drive where that data is sent or being kind of used. I know I gave you a bit more of a demo last month around Power Automate Desktop, so I won't focus too much around it today, but a great way that you can use this tool to kind of in that sort of approach. So very quickly, because I want to get back to the slides to quickly show you just a couple more slides. You'll see here that I've now switched over to Power Virtual Agents. So in here, this is my building area. So I've just purchased my Power Virtual Agents license, and now I'm coming in and I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I build my bot? And the way that it works is it works on topics. So, you'll have a topic, maybe it's an introduction topic, or maybe it's let's process this information and kickstart a Power Automate topic. Each topic can be a subset or a structure of conversation or data gathering, which can then pass over to another topic, which could then handle the kind of handover to kind of Power Automate. It just gives you a way to create subsets of a bigger machine, so you can have various different branching topics that are fired, or depending on what's answered in your introduction topic, would depend on which secondary topic it chooses to then go through the conversation for. So if we just create an introduction topic here, so let's call this call it welcome to the bot, or just a welcome. Just call it welcome. Come or call it hello. Let's call it hello. And you can have trigger phrases, so it can be any phrase, so anyone can type in anything to the bot itself and it would come back automatically with this, or they could ask it a specific phrase, and from that phrase it would be able to define, okay, well, this is the conversation you want because of that phrase. So once we've created our topic, we can then go to the authoring canvas, and this is where we can construct the conversation, which is good. Once it loads up, you'll see our topic saved, and we now have our kind of building element here. So Again, you can change or modify your trigger phrases here to kickstart your process, but from this element, you can then define what your bot is going to say to your end user. So, welcome to customer service. Customer service, please select from an option below. I've gone down the route there of giving them options of what, so that would be a button that they can click within the bot. Instead, this could be something like, welcome to customer services. Please start typing the issue that you have. And something along those lines. And then what you can do here is you can create in fact, that should be a question. Let me welcome to customer service. We'll have that. And what we'll do is we'll ask a question, which is, how can we help you today? Well, David, that's a lot better. And then from here, you can define what happens after or with the response that they give to this question. So you can basically be multiple choice options that you can give to them. It could be the user's entire response. So what was their response to this? So you'll be able to kind of pull or extract information from that. It could be a Boolean, so it could be a yes or no, or it could be a choice field. But it could also, so you can build new options here or new choices, which are all saved to variables, which you don't need to worry about. It'll pre kind of cursor the names for you. But you can also directly link to entities and Dataverse as well within a database. So you could use entities as the inputs. So it's a great way of interacting and getting that information directly from there. But you can also do actions as well, as I mentioned. So, you could build, depending on someone's response, then, what's going to happen. You're going to run a Power Automate off the back of that. Yep, just by simply calling an action and then selecting Power Automate there, or creating a flow, which will, pretty much run the action that needs to happen after that. So, you're building the conversation for that end user, but then you've got that element of automation at the back end. And you can see from this, even though it looks rather complex-ish, I'm still feeding in information here. So how can we help today? I'm identifying what information I'm expecting back from this. And then depending on what information I receive back, so the condition, like we've seen in Power Automate, it's going to do a particular action. And each separate action can call a different flow, or it can call a different topic, or it can simply carry on down the kind of flow itself. And then once you've built a little bit of conversation, you can test the bot here by asking the trigger phrases or the questions that drive that particular aspect. So kind of really intuitive, really easy to get to grips with, and something that I definitely would recommend. So quickly, before I step back to the slides, this is the Power Automate or Power Platform licensing guide. Microsoft release one of these every time the license change. This one has some updates in there around the new functionality that you can do with the free licenses within M365. It also highlights a lot about the automation elements, the RPA elements. So there's now an RPA variant to the Power Automate licensing, for unattended and attended. So it's quite kind of good from that kind of scenario. So we'll kind of give you that as part of the kind of pack that we send to you after the event. So let me just step back into the slides. If I can press the right button. Hopefully you can all see this. So again, I've just got a little slide here just to let you know about the licensing guide. Where you can access that, but as I said, we'll share that with you. But what about the future and the wider ecosystem for RPA and automation in general? So as I mentioned all throughout the kind of the webinar today, the tools are always evolving. Power Automate is quickly moving on the Gartner Magic Quadrant for RPA, especially with the dawn of Power Automate Desktop. And it's very quickly moving in that kind of top right direction as it adds more and more innovation in there. It adds more platform ease and functionality. So it's definitely advancing with time. Benefits from already established crowd-driven technologies. So Power Automate has been around for, or Flow has been around for a long time. And that's quite mature, quite kind of integrated, so kind of great kind of ways that you can kind of utilize that. And then obviously machine learning, AI and cognitive services, they are advancing with different models, different tools, different functions. Microsoft have put a lot of effort into advancing these tools. There's so much you can do with this outside the more templated model-driven elements. But everything that's coming from the more engineer aspects are all making their way into those models. So that's only going to get better. Third-party tools are setting the standards. So UiPath, Blue Pyramid, Blue Prism. I can never remember what the kind of other third-party tool is, but they are setting the standard, not so much with the intelligent aspects, but with the UI-based elements of automation. And that's where Power Automate Desktop is really taking a lot of the lessons learned from those tools and harnessing them in its own kind of solution. And then the future is intelligence, as I mentioned, and as I showed you with AI Builder and how those elements sit together. This is where true automation or true RPA really does drive the benefits, because you're kind of automating a lot of this really hard things for departments to do, all at the click of a button, or not even the click of a button, all with an interaction with a Power App or a scheduled flow to kickstart these processes. So all of that information is going to make its way into where you need it, which is fantastic. So with that, and apologies to Ras for overstepping my boundaries with time, but that is me. Thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it.
Great, thanks very much, Dave. So before we look at any questions that have come in, just like to apologise if anyone experienced some trouble connecting to the webinar this morning. It looks like a second empty Teams meeting was created when we were issuing the webinar invitation. But if that was you, don't worry if you missed the start, because the whole webinar has been recorded. So we'll be sharing that with everybody shortly after the session. So to those who did make it, thank you for coming along. I hope you found it useful. We're really keen to carry on the conversation around Microsoft 365 with you. So if you have any interest in taking any of this further, do drop us a line. We'll be providing contact details for you shortly. So with that, let me jump into some questions. So Alex asks, I think this was at the first stage of your Power Automate demo, Dave. Would I be able to use this with Power BI? I'm interested in displaying a Microsoft Forms output automatically in Power BI.
Yes, is the short answer to that. So using Power Automate to interact or to, I suppose, transform data for Power BI is something that's quite mature. It's all about how you're building your Power BI out the back of that. So your Power Automate is going to capture the data, it's going to transform the data, it's going to do whatever you need to do around capturing that information before it then sends it into Power BI, builds whatever you need it to do, and having that in a place where that integration is seamless is something that can be a little bit challenging, but it's definitely possible and definitely something you can do.
Cool. Sarita asks, you mentioned around the different types of automation with attended and unattended, especially when it comes to the license models. How do they differ in functionality?
That's a good question. So unattended and attended, I mean, I've talked about how they are functionally different. So one is very much, you click a button, you do this, you do that, and the automation kick starts. With the unattended, it's very much, it used to be, if we're thinking about things like UiPath, it used to be very server orientated. So this process or this bot would live on this server, or let's say cloud service for Power Automate elements. But what it would do is it would sit there, it would fire automatically, it would run automatically, and data or whatever the kind of end result would be, it happens automatically. So the function is the complete automation of the process, but usually that comes with a bit of a license hike because you're relying more on the cloud service or the server side of things. Hopefully that explains it.
Thanks. And final question, Jamie says, the features of AI Builder look good, but how does the licensing work for AI Builder specifically?
Yes. This is probably it's a good question, so thanks very much for that. But yeah, it's all about the base kind of Power Apps and Power Platform licensing. It does not include the AI tools or the kind of AI Builder specifically. So they're all classed as kind of bolt-on licenses. It's all detailed in the licensing sheet that we'll share out with you. It all depends on how much process you're pushing through that, how much you're using the tool or the model that you build. So it's very much usage based for the costs. There's a standard kind of service fee, but then there's that kind of usage element. So it's anything that uses machine learning, bots, frameworks, or any element like that can be a little bit hard to gauge the cost of, but I think the benefits of it really outweigh the costs, and I don't think the cost would be too kind of eye-opening or surprising.
Okay. And Alex, from the first question, if you remember that one, has followed up. Saying, would the same be true of a forms output to an Excel sheet, thinking about automatic recording?
So yes, forms to Excel and vice versa, Excel to forms would work well. The only thing I've seen with that in prior kind of engagements is it could be a little bit flaky. I don't like using that word, but when it comes to the Excel data being used or input to create a form, sometimes the form can come out is in different weird and wonderful ways. So building a form template that you can then pull that data into is definitely most advisable. Yeah, that's the only thing I would say around that. But yeah, entirely possible. But one of the great things about Power Automate Desktop, I know I'm waffling too much now, but one of the great things about Power Automate Desktop is its next iteration or its next interaction is directly with things like forms, so that you can take data that you've collected on a Excel sheet on your device, manipulate that data, and then directly inject that into a form with a template, with the kind of the graphics and kind of, you know, a templated kind of branded solution. You know, so it makes it even more seamless to get that in there, taking it away from the cloud service and looking more at the desktop. Okay, definitely finished now, Terence.
Great. Well, finally, Sylvia says, not a question, just a comment. Great demo and provided lots of ideas for current projects. So it's a ringing endorsement.
Good, fantastic. Glad to hear it. Always get in touch. We can help you with your new engagements. No problem at all.
Okay, so I think that, yeah, we've gone over time a little bit there, so we'll need to wrap it up. But thanks to everybody who's attended today. Hopefully you found it useful. This is part of a series of events, so we'll be in touch with you by email to let you know about the next ones. In the meantime, if you want to drop us a line, as Dave says, you've got our website address on the screen now, company-net.com. Thank you very much.